2023 has been quite the eventful year for Sonic fans. Starting off, we had the announcement and eventual release of brand new LEGO sets. Although they're more toy than display pieces, such as the Green Hill Zone idea set, I'm sure there's an audience for them. We then got another season of Sonic Prime on Netflix, which really holds its own. I'll always be partial to Sonic X since that's what I grew up on, but it was really nice seeing all the praise that the series was getting on platforms like Twitter. The final Horizon update for Sonic Frontiers came out about a month ago and has received some mixed reviews. If you want to hear my thoughts on it, check out my video on the game. Now we reach the big release of 2023, the fully original, all-new 2D game and successor to Sonic Mania, Sonic Superstars. With how much Sonic-related material was released in such a short amount of time, it brings up the question of if Sega and Sonic Team are stretching themselves thin. While everything else this past year has been great in my opinion, the real judgment will come with Sega's brand new, all-original 2D Sonic game. It's funny because nearly every 2D Sonic game has pushed the gaming medium forward in some regard. Sonic 1 introduced momentum-based platforming with level design based around speed. Sonic 2 iterated on that with better level design, more iconic gimmicks, and set the bar for what a good sequel should be, as well as introducing Tails. Sonic 3 and Knuckles was an early predecessor for what modern DLC would be, with the introduction of Lock-On Technology, which was never used again after these games. Sonic 4 was Sonic 4, and Mania showed how a talented fan community can bring forth an amazing product with hardly any flaws. Sonic Superstars had a lot to live up to, and at a $60 price point, I was expecting something phenomenal. Sega enlisted the help of Arzest, known for absolutely goated titles like Street Pass Me Plaza and Wii Play Motion, to co-develop this game. That brings up the question, is Arzest gonna be the Dimps for Sega in the 2020s? Because Dimps did a great job on the Sonic Advance series as well as the DS games, so maybe Sonic Team can begin to put out more of these 2D games while saving the big 3D releases for every few years as to not sacrifice the quality of their games. Sonic Superstars is a game that gets a lot of stuff right, but it ultimately feels like 2D Sonic has taken a large step back. Let's look at each facet of the game and talk about why. Sonic Superstars starts out similar to every other 2D Sonic game, where Sonic and his friends are up against Eggman, who's trying to enslave all the animals and turn them into his robots. The usual stuff. Well, now we get the return of a really niche villain, Fang the Hunter. If you didn't know, Fang was in a bunch of games from the 90s like Sonic Triple Trouble and Sonic the Fighters where he went by a few different names. Sega actually decided to use these alternate names as Fang's aliases to help him evade the law. A really nice lore consistency that a Sonic lore expert like me certainly appreciates. Fang returns as Eggman's hired mercenary to scout out the all-new North Star Islands and aid him against Sonic. While a lot of the islands from all these classic Sonic games seem pretty interchangeable, except you, Angel Island, my beloved. Something unique about the North Star Islands is that it has these really big flickies, and they get used to power a lot of the mini-bosses you'll encounter throughout the game. You take control of Sonic, or any one of his friends, as you venture through the game's zones, which vary heavily in quality, but we'll talk about that soon. You go from small island chains being held together by bridges, to a jungle, to floating ruins in the sky? This is kinda where it became apparent to me that there was very little cohesion behind the zone order in the game. As you progress further into the game, you'll notice stuff like this and it'll really stand out. Like, how does Sonic enter this digital world for Cyberstation? It's after Golden Capital, which has no indication of anything technological, so what's the deal? In your travels on the island, you'll fight up against Eggman and bosses and Fang in a few zones. Fang gets accompanied by a brand new character. This is Trip the Sungazer. We see in their interactions that Trip is a bit nervous and always seems to mess up Fang's plans, accidentally of course, and we can see how much Fang berates her for this. It gets to the point that in one point in the game, Trip allies herself with Amy since she's a naturally good person and takes care of Trip, who is all alone after being abandoned by Fang. Sonic and friends destroy one of Eggman's factories, but Fang gets back at them by snatching the Chaos Emeralds off of Knuckles. I swear, it's like every time this guy has some responsibility, he flushes it down the toilet. I'm not liking how Sega is continuing the Knuckles is irresponsible and stupid train that they did a good job of distancing themselves from in Sonic Frontiers. But that doesn't end up having any long-term effects since Trip just takes them right back and turns into a dragon? What? This one cutscene infuriated me, not only because it looked like Fang was getting into this really cool mech for an awesome boss battle, and then Trip just takes him out in one hit, in a cutscene? Like, they couldn't have given us something to play to lead up to this? Like, maybe we do like a minute of the boss fight and then get the opportunity to snag the emeralds? Fuck Golden Capital Zone. Worst part of the game. Where was I? Oh yeah, then you're in Cyber Station, and that's pretty neat. Probably has the only good boss battle in the entire game with this massive robot that's based off of the robot you customize in the robot battle mode. And now we're at the penultimate zone, and it sucks. It's just an Eggman factory in the snow that he uses to launch the Egg Fortress. It's the same fucking thing. Why couldn't they just keep it consistent by calling it the Death Egg? You know, I actually enjoy how it always finds a way to come back, like the Death Star in Star Wars episodes 4 through 6, but come on. Obviously, you take out the Egg Fortress and just barely make it out. Like another game. Except this time, it actually blows up. You'd think that's everything, but it isn't. This game finds ways to disappoint me. Now you get to do the same thing, but this time as Trip. Why? I don't know, one of Eggman's robots was seen or something. You go through all the same zones and even get to fight that giant Fang mech, so at least there's that to look forward to. Even after all that, 11 zones and 11 more zones, we get the last story. Except it's not cool like in Sonic Adventure 2, it actually sucks. Somehow, a magical portal opens up and a giant evil dragon now threatens the world. See, if you were paying attention, you'd know that a mural foretold this, and I totally didn't just leave it out because the mural was in a throwaway cutscene and literally anyone would miss it. So Sonic turns super and beats it. The end. Sorry if it seems like I'm not enthusiastic about this, because I'm not. This game just drained me, and for some reason, I haven't felt like this about any other classic Sonic game. Like, I can beat all the others in a single sitting each, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it for this. Could it be because of the gameplay and level design? The gameplay and level design of Sonic Superstars imitates that of the 90s 2D games fairly well, so there's not much I can harp on. The level design in some of these zones feels like the best 2D Sonic level design we've seen. The multiple branching pathways and opportunities to take a different route flow so beautifully into each other, and even though maintaining your speed is hard from your first time through, with repeated playthroughs you learn how to avoid speed hazards and have a magnificent flow in your gameplay. There are areas of concern, however. Take Sky Temple and Egg Fortress. Why on earth would they make Sonic move so incredibly slow whenever he goes into one of these wind columns or gravity chambers, a lot of which are unavoidable, so you're kind of stuck in these pace breakers? No need to worry, there are bright spots. Pinball Carnival has this thrilling section where you're running or rolling around on roller coaster tracks that begin to fall apart due to missiles blowing up the supports at the bottom, making it a challenge to get through it quickly without dying. I didn't do it perfectly the first time, which is alright since there are no lives in this game. You see, recently there's been a movement to get rid of the lives system in video games. People say it's an outdated mechanic that only exists because of arcade machines so they can suck up quarters and all that, but I never really minded lives. It would suck when I'd have to restart Sonic 1 or 2 because I died too much, but Sonic 3 and onward did an excellent job of just sending you back to Act 1 of whatever zone you were in, just so you know that dying isn't a good thing and that there is a consequence for it. But it's not too bad. I can only assume that in Sonic Team's quest to make every zone stand out with some groundbreaking gimmick, they came up with some less than stellar ones and felt that they had to include them so that these zones could stand out. Yeah, they stand out alright. Thinking about it, every good Sonic zone has some sort of gimmick, but here they're either just unremarkable or overused, kind of getting rid of the whole gimmick feeling. Thankfully, there's an abundance of new badniks in this game. They get really varied, especially in zones like Pinball Carnival, with these seals that bounce explosive barrels on their noses, these rabbits that look an awful lot like Splats the Rabbit, a cut badnik from Sonic 1, except now they have sheets over themselves to look like ghosts to fit the whole haunted carnival aesthetic. While the badniks are nice, the bosses are abysmal. There's maybe one good boss in the entire game, and it's the metal robot from Cyberstation. The bosses here operate on a strict attack pattern that gives players seldom opportunity to speed up the battle and wail on the bosses. In prior Sonic games, you'd sit through an attack pattern and then have the opportunity to put an attack after attack on the boss. Sometimes you'd even get the chance to bypass the attack phase with a well-timed jump or some skillful mastery of your momentum. But in Sonic Superstars, you sit through the pattern and get to attack once. Only once! It just makes these battles way too long, and it feels like a waiting simulator. This shouldn't be how a Sonic game is made. You might be wondering why I haven't mentioned any of Sonic's friends. In prior 2D games, Tails and Knuckles had unique stage elements and even stages exclusive to them based around their abilities. Well, here, every character plays the same. There are very little differences in stage layout depending on the character you choose, which is really disappointing because I loved Knuckles' stages in Sonic 3. There is the occasional level where you're forced to take control of another character, and those typically do a good job of utilizing their character's abilities, but I just wish there was more of a tangible difference in choosing who you'll play as. Despite the gimmicks, I love the hazard placement and platforming opportunities that enable you to blaze through these levels once you're experienced enough. But I suppose it's time to talk about the elephant in the room. A big part of this game's advertising was all the new powers for the Chaos Emeralds. We saw this in one of the trailers, with Sonic utilizing the Dark Blue Emerald to create multiple images of himself that could be used in battle. Before the game's release, it had me conjuring how these would be implemented meaningfully throughout the game, since not everyone would collect the Chaos Emeralds, so how would they balance the challenge and rewards of collecting the Chaos Emeralds with the utilization of these new powers? And wait, how come these things even exist at all? If this game takes place after Mania and before Sonic Adventure, how are these powers never mentioned in any other game? Yes, I know, they're retroactively creating these Emerald powers out of thin air, and that they can't change the past games to match this new lore inconsistency, but it's like, why would they even do this without thinking of the questions that could be brought up in relation to it? The Emerald powers are as follows. There's Avatar, which creates a bunch of images of the player to run all around the screen and attack enemies. Bullet turns you into a fireball where you can fire yourself in any direction, kind of like Burst from Sonic Colors DS. Water, which turns your character into a liquidy form, making water traversal incredibly easy. Ivy lets you grow a vine out of the ground to help raise you up to higher sections of the level. Vision reveals hidden platforms and rings scattered throughout the level, which can lead to secrets and alternate pathways. Slow does just as the name implies. It slows down time to help you navigate sections of the level that are moving just a bit too fast. And finally, there's Extra. Yeah, that's the name. A unique power depending on which character you choose. Sonic gets the homing attack, Tails gets his tornado tailspin, Amy gets to throw her hammer, and Knuckles gets to punch. Oh, and Trip can breathe fireballs that bounce across the level. See, the problem with these is that levels were never designed around them, since you could do an entire playthrough without collecting a single emerald. You'll get a little pop-up telling you there's an opportunity to utilize your emerald power if you've collected the designated emerald, but I kind of ignored them for the most part. I even ignored Supersonic, which is a real surprise. The emerald powers are activated through this mini menu that lets you select the specific power, but once you collect all of them, you have the ability to go super, given you have 50 rings or more, of course. While all the characters get their usual power boost, Trip turns back into her dragon form, which lets you fly infinitely and can completely break the game, since you don't even have to touch the level. Who thought this was a good idea? Some of these powers absolutely break the game. Speedrunners utilize the Red Emerald's power, Burst, to fly high up above the level geometry and out of bounds to help skip large chunks of the game or even bosses in some instances. I honestly think this game would have been better had they removed the Emerald powers altogether or made them a story requirement so that the later levels in the game could fully utilize these powers in a more fulfilling way to help bring some much needed identity to this game, because this game kinda lacks one. Something you'll notice that makes this game stand out from the rest of the classic 2D games is that it isn't pixelated. Sonic Team said that moving forward, all 2D games would be done in this 2.5D perspective, where they have their 3D models moving in a 2D plane. Alright, that's not necessarily bad, but the execution in this game just isn't it. The characters are designed in this weird cutesy style that completely gets rid of Sonic's attitude that drew so many people into the series in the first place. The stages here vary in design quality. There are some like Speed Jungle and Pinball Carnival that take some pre-existing ideas from other Sonic games and blend in some fresh new ideas to help make these zones incredible. Like Act 1 of Pinball Carnival. Oh, you're going through a standard Sonic gambling entertainment stage. But the next act is a spooky carnival reminiscent of something from Scooby-Doo. And then there's stuff like Golden Capital. This zone has absolutely no identity. I mean, there's gold and lava, but sadly, the colors are all washed out, making it a terrible zone. Just like how the zones vary in design quality, the music for these zones varies as well, although not nearly as much. This game boasts the largest set of composers out of any Sonic game. Feel free to correct me in the comments, but Sonic Superstars has 5 unique composers who all do an excellent job throughout the game. New to the Sonic series are Hidenori Shoji and Takehiro Kai, known for tracks from the Yakuza series. Seasoned veteran Jun Sano stands out in this soundtrack at several points. T-Lopes returns from Sonic Mania to produce some of the best tracks in this game, and rounding out the music team is Rentaro Soma, who had just made his debut with the cyberspace level themes in Sonic Frontiers. In most cases, a diverse music team would be beneficial, but here it's painfully obvious which track is composed by which composer based off of the rhythm and instrumentation, which can make the game feel a bit disconnected at times. While Jun Sano did an excellent job on the Sonic games of the 2000s, here he overutilizes the Sega Genesis sound chip, and it ends up making his tracks sound like they belong in Sonic 4. The rhythms are always nice. Press Factory has this neat cluttered robotic feel, kind of like how a factory would have so much going on, but with the Genesis sound font, it doesn't work out as well as it could. For the most part, all the tracks are great. Stuff like Bridge Island, Speed Jungle, and Sand Sanctuary all make me bop my head, and I'll occasionally listen to their tracks throughout my day. At times, it does seem like the game is trying too hard to emulate prior Sonic music tracks. Take Lagoon City Act 2. Isn't it a little too similar to Hydrocity Act 1? On top of that, a lot of the tracks you'll hear during bosses absolutely suck. They give off zero sense of intimidation or fear like you'd hear in any other Sonic game. Take a listen. Bad enough that these bosses are piss easy, but for the music to not even offer any sense of dread doesn't help this game. It feels as if Sonic Superstars lacks an identity in both visuals and audio. While there are some flashes in the pan, it doesn't do enough to define this game as anything more than just another 2D Sonic game. The inconsistencies all around the game make it so I kind of dreaded playing through it multiple times as each character to get a good sense of the game. I'm almost certain that if I were to play with other people, it'd be a far more enjoyable experience. But as it stands, this falls well below Sonic Mania, and ultimately is a step back in the 2D Sonic formula. Until they can find a way to regain some identity with these games, Sega's gonna flounder. And with Nintendo putting out games like Super Mario Wonder, they may just be pulling ahead with the lead in the 2D platformer genre. It's a real shame that Sega seemed to have abandoned the team that worked on Mania. A devoted team of fans with knowledge behind game design can do a lot for a series. That's why there are so many awesome Sonic fan games. Hopefully, if Sega continues to partner with Arzest, they can improve with each game they put out. Kind of like how Dimps only grew after helping with Sonic Advance. You know, I gotta stop getting my hopes up for these Sonic games because I often find myself making excuses for a lot of the poor design choices. I don't think this deserves to be a $60 game, especially because Sonic Mania was like $20 and leagues above Superstars. I think this game is always just going to be known as a letdown, following up one of the best 2D platformers ever in Sonic Mania. Which is difficult to do, but I mean, Mania followed up Sonic 3, which followed up Sonic 2, which followed up Sonic 1. While every other release seemed to build off of the prior 2D Sonic game, Superstars just played it safe, and it hurts the game's legacy in the long run. So nice job, Superstars. I'll come back to you to play like 4 of your zones and then avoid everything else. At the end of the day, I just expect more, especially because fans have made some really incredible games. Like if you want a good game that has Fang the Hunter in it, check out Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit by Noah Copeland over on Game Jolt. I'll put the link down in the description. If you enjoyed this video, it would mean a lot to me if you could like and subscribe. And if you want to let me know how wrong I am about this game and how my status as a Sonic Mega fan has now been revoked, let me know down in the comments. If you want to join my Discord server, that'll also be down in the description, as well as my Twitter. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe. My entire self-worth is dependent on this, please!